On today's show, how good can Nick Lardis be in the NHL? We'll talk about that and a lot more on today's episode of Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, where we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hattie Kalakash, QMJHL and crossover scout for Elite Prospects, with Sebastian High, USHL and crossover scout for the same scouting team. And on today's show, we'll be talking about the Rinkside Roundup. It's a weekly article we put out on Elite Prospects where we talk about the week's top performers. In this episode, we'll focus on Nick Lardis and Dmitri Buchelnikov in the first segment. In the second segment, we'll focus on Sam Dickinson and Terik Parascak. And then in the third segment, we'll focus on Tomas Mrsic and Philippe Veilleux. So 6 top performers in this past week who have been playing really, really well. So we'll focus on their games in detail, talk about what they did this week, how many points they put up, all that good stuff. Before we get into the episode, though, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get up to $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. If you're watching on YouTube, as usual, remember to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you think of the episode. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rate and review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. So let's get started right away with Nick Lardis here in the first segment. He's been absolutely phenomenal for Brentford this past week. Has scored basically back-to-back 3-goal, 1-assist games. I had to double-check at one point to make sure it was 2 separate games, but they're against 2 separate opponents. The first one was against, I believe, Brampton, and the second one was against Niagara. 3 goals, 1 assist in each, and he also had another 1-assist game in the week, bringing his total on the week of 3 games, 6 goals, 3 assists, 9 points. He's up to 29 points on the season, 20 goals, 9 assists. He's definitely going for the Cy Young in the OHL this year. Talk me through the interesting stuff from Lardis this past week, and let me know kind of what your thoughts are on this prospect. We've been following him for a while. You know, he was a guy that his draft year was one of the first years that we really kind of both focused full on scouting and, got into the draft class. So yeah, talk me through his game.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Lardis is a really dynamic goal scorer from the wing. He was a really interesting player in his draft year, a very young player, pretty undersized as well. Still had a lot of physical tools that need development, but the habits underlying the goal scoring and the absolutely thunderous release have always been there with this player. And he sits second in OHL goals so far this season, only 3 behind Michael Misa, and also 3 ahead of next best Kevin He. So he's very much separating himself from like that Porter Martone, Luca Pinelli pack of goal scorers at this point in the OHL, and really catching up to Michael Misa in goals, which is pretty impressive considering he also has 2 games in hand. But he's a 5'11", 185-pound left shot left winger, so he's definitely added some weight to his frame since being drafted. And while he never is going to project as a true two-way player in terms of like defensive intensity, it really is the offensive capabilities that make him special. This is certainly a player that is unique in Chicago's system as a finishing talent, and a prospect I think Blackhawks fans should be very glad to have in their cupboards.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been absolutely phenomenal to start the year. The goal scoring skills always popped off the charts. Incredibly smart goal scorer with really good off-puck instincts in the offensive zone. But he's mainly really just been a highly scoring leaning winger, right? He's always been the type of guy who will position off the puck, will find space, will shoot. But in terms of creating space for his teammates, using his playmaking in more intelligent ways, that was kind of the area of development that was going to have to be a focus moving forward. And 20 goals, 9 assists this season. I don't know if he's really accomplished that. In the tape that I watched, he's still very much scoring leaning. There are still some flashes that were there in his draft year, and they're certainly there this year as well, where he'll move laterally, open up a lane, make a quick read off the cycle and find a teammate in the slot, that kind of stuff. But he's still he uses his skating to cut across the ice, but doesn't really identify how that movement kind of creates space for his teammates on the ice. So that's kind of the main issue with Lardis moving forward. That's the thing he's going to have to develop. So I'll be interested to see how he kind of develops that as he moves forward, but this is usually something you explore within the OHL at least before you go to the AHL level. This is an area that I think he's going to need the next 6-7 months to really focus on that. Otherwise, it's going to affect his development and make him pretty predictable to pro defenders. But moving forward, we also have Dmitri Buchelnikov to talk about. He's been very, very interesting in the KHL. Last season, he was playing with Admiral Vladivostok, which is another kind of bottom tier team in the KHL. Put up half a point a game, looked decent, looked like he was progressing really well for a 20-year-old last year. That's not bad. Now in his 21-year-old season, he's with Vityaz Moscow region, which is also a very bad team. So it looked like a lateral move at best for Buchelnikov, but he's really made the most of it so far. He's at a point a game right now. He's third in the KHL in points at 21 years old. And he's been very, very interesting. It was a second-round pick in the 2022 NHL draft from the Detroit Red Wings, a prospect who not a lot of people had heard about back then, right?
Yeah, it was definitely one of Detroit's more obscure picks, but one that is turning out really nicely. He was one of the youngest players eligible in his draft class, and certainly a player that has taken some really big leaps in development since being picked. As you mentioned, he's third in league scoring on his team. He's right at the top. He has one more point than his two line mates, and also double the amount of points as his teammate Frederick Gauthier. So he's doubled the point tally of a very recent NHLer on his team. And yeah, this is a player with a lot of offensive flair. He likes to make things happen. The handling speed and the overall like foot speed and pace in his game are certainly an area of strength for this player. And he's able to layer those talents together into a really cohesive, pacey offensive toolkit. At 5'10" and 170 pounds, he's a bit undersized as a right shot left winger, but certainly has the feet and the hands to evade pressure. And while I'd like to see a bit more contact initiation in his game in terms of some things that he'll need to implement before making the leap to a full-time NHL role, he's definitely taken steps on the physical side in the past year or two.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been very phenomenal to watch this kind of progression in his game because he's been a very, very, like Nick Lardis, he's been a very scoring, shooting, leaning winger. But with Buchelnikov, the interesting thing is he's playing against men and he's actually exploring different areas of his game and kind of developing that playmaking side very interestingly. It's actually been the main way he's produced so far this year. He's at 8 goals and 18 assists this past season. And it's not like he's shooting a ton and people are putting in the rebounds. He's really finding lanes incredibly well in transition. Off the cycle, he's really good at catching pucks on his backhand, kind of spinning off pressure, finding outlets in the middle of the ice. It's been a very interesting progression in his game so far. The way that he's kind of molded his playmaking game and kind of built it into a shooting arsenal. He cuts across the ice, he cuts across defenders, he sets the puck up in his hip pocket, looks up, everything in his body looks like he's going to shoot, and then he finds a trailer, he finds a fourth man in transition. It's a very interesting skill set, and this is actually exactly what I wanted to see from Buchelnikov post-draft, these progressions in his game. It's been very interesting. What do you see as his upside, though? I see a middle six winger, definitely still a scorer, but with some dual threat offense as well. But what do you see in Buchelnikov's game moving forward?
Yeah, I think middle six winger is kind of where I would fall as well. A player that can maybe play on the second line if an injury rolls around, but when the full team is healthy, maybe like a play driver on a third line, and perhaps the more skilled element on that line if he really hits his upside. Especially because in Detroit's system, you have a lot of players that are really made for those middle six roles, whether it be Marco Kasper, Nate Danielson, or Michael Brandsegg-Newgard. You have a lot of talent in those positions. And to have Buchelnikov as a player that can push the pace, add a lot of skill while playing with two of those three players, perhaps, I think that's a really nice fit where he's perhaps a bit insulated defensively and given space and room to try things and explore the offensive game while also being able to be like a primary puck carrier to ease the burden on his linemen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a very interesting prospect to watch moving forward. But what he's doing so far in the KHL on a pretty bad team is very, very promising. That wraps things up for our first segment. We'll get into our second segment here where we talk about Sam Dickinson and Terik Parascak, 2 first-rounders from this past draft who have been really popping off. We'll get into that in just a sec, but just before, a quick word from our sponsors at PrizePicks and Game Time.
PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players goes down injured. If your player leaves after the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your lineups live. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Do you think Connor McDavid will get more than 0.5 goals next week? Austin Matthews even more than that? Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this hockey season when you and your crew run your game on PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code LOCKEDONNHL. PrizePicks, run your game.
If you're looking to buy cheap tickets last minute to any event, Game Time is the best place to secure them. Game Time is safe, secure, incredibly easy to use, and they're absolutely obsessed with saving you money. They've got deals at every single step of the way. Flash deals, zone deals, last minute deals, and they also have the Game Time guarantee to make sure you always get the best price for your tickets. And on top of that, you've got the all-in pricing toggle that you can toggle in the app and see exactly what the final price is after fees, after taxes. So there's absolutely no surprise, and you know exactly what you're paying for and make the best decision for your wallet. I use Game Time all the time when it comes to finding games last minute. It's very, very useful. You can get tickets up until the last minute before the event starts or an hour after it starts, and you can just scan your QR code on your way to the game and get in the action. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, super simple. You just create an account and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. So download the Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Alrighty, so moving on to our second segment here, we'll be talking about Sam Dickinson and Terik Parascak's insane weeks this past week. We'll start with Dickinson, who's just absolutely on fire these days. I mean, just absolutely phenomenal performances from him. He's averaging 30 minutes a night right now with London in the OHL. Absolutely ridiculous how often this kid is on the ice. Top power play, top pair, top penalty kill, you name it. He's taking all the responsibilities in London. Talk me through his point totals this past week and his point totals on the season, which are actually up there with some of the best ever among draft plus one prospects in the OHL.
Absolutely. So Sam Dickinson this past week had a 5-assist week. Did not score a goal this time around, but he was very involved offensively. His 1.76 goals points per game so far this season is 5th in the OHL among all players, let alone just defensemen. He's first by a mile in terms of blue liners and in production, and even just in raw points, he sits in joint 8th in the league. Also, actually, sorry, there is one defenseman with more points than him, significantly less points per game, and that is Luca Morelli, very surprisingly, who has 31 points in 22 games so far this season. So there's your fun OHL fact of the day. But Sam Dickinson, as he mentioned, has been fantastic so far, playing like with all the responsibility, big offensive role, 30 points in 17 games, including 11 goals from the blue line. This player is playing a lot. He's playing very effectively. Play has been breaking down a little bit for him in the defensive zone at times. It hasn't all been rosy, but when you're playing 30 minutes a night for a team like the London Knights, you're not going to be perfect all night, every night. And Sam Dickinson has been a difference maker offensively, and we've seen what he can do on the defensive side of things. We've seen the suffocating rush defending that he can play with. So he's definitely showing a different area of his toolkit a bit more clearly this season, and I think things are going to stabilize a little bit in a common middle ground with time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been very interesting with Dickinson's kind of, it's always been the decision making, right? Like, and it depends on how you see it. I mean, you could see it as, listen, he's playing 30 minutes a night. Brain farts are inevitable when you're playing that often. But what's also really interesting with Dickinson is, despite the fact that he's playing 30 minutes a night, I make sure to watch him late in shifts, especially late in games. seconds, 30 seconds, away from the end of the end of the game. And the effort is constant. He doesn't look tired, right? So if he doesn't look tired physically, maybe he's mentally tired, but I mean, listen, his effort level does not wane. He goes all on basically every shift. And he's very interesting to watch in that regard. But yeah, I mean, you watch this game overall. Like last game I watched, he put up 3 assists. His third assist was on an empty net goal, but the third assist was him basically blocking one shot. And then the puck rims back again to his opponent. He makes a great effort to cut off a passing lane. The puck is loose. He makes another hard effort in order to get to the loose puck, poke it into neutral zone, and then his teammate skates it out for a goal. It was Ethan Cowan's goal on the empty net, right? Like that's the kind of effort that you don't usually see from a player playing 30 minutes a night in the last minute of a game where he's at his 29th minute in the game, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of effort that it takes late in the game. So this is a prospect who is so incredibly fit on top of having ridiculous tools. Great skater, great shooter from the blue line, great passing as well, physical, dominant along the boards, right? Like it's really just the mental aspects I need to clean up for him to be an NHLer. But moving forward, we also have Terik Parascak to talk about in this segment. And Parascak was a 17th overall pick of the Washington Capitals, a prospect who I was a very big fan of, but even I didn't see him going in the top 20 of the 2024 NHL draft. That was, I mean, it was a vote of confidence from the Capitals, right? But how's he been doing so far this week?
He's been doing very well this week. I mean, this is a player who also logged 5 assists this past week and bringing his season totals to 11 goals and 19 assists for 30 points, which is good for like 15th in league scoring. Actually, joined 12th in league scoring in the WHL. He's only 5 points off of second place as well. So there's a big lot of players in that like 20-2 range that are between 30 and 35 points. And then there's Gavin McKenna up at 41, and he doesn't want to be caught anytime soon. But Terik Parascak has been really good this season, and unlike Sam Dickinson, the brain has never been an area of question with this player. It is actually the foundation of what makes him special. He's highly intelligent, very cerebral. He's a very tactical mind at both sides of the puck. The ability to find soft ice in the offensive zone is among the best in the WHL already. Has a really good shot that he can get off like on a one-timer as well. Really good catch and release. And the one big development in his game this season, as you've been informing me, has been the rush play, which is really good to see because the rush attacking was his most limited facet last season in his offensive toolkit, where he preferred to just allow his line mates to do that work for him in order to find that space in the offensive zone, find those pockets. But he's been a lot more proactive this season so far, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's been very interesting to watch because with Terik Parascak, the main issue is the skating. He's a very, very poor skater. Well, not very, very poor. He still wins straight line races, but he doesn't have the agility, the acceleration in order to be as effective off the rush. Because rush plays a lot less, you can get away with being fast and playing off the rush without the agility and the acceleration in the WHL. But to be a translatable rush player, you need that agility, you need that acceleration, you need to be able to use timely bursts of speed and quick shifts and moves in transition to create. That's what was lacking in Parascak's game. And as a result, what he was doing a lot in this draft year was passing off the zone exit to his teammates and then moving off the puck and using his off-puck processing in order to create off the rush when he did, which wasn't that often because what that does is put a lot of pressure. It delegates the problem. It makes the puck someone else's problem. But now what we're seeing from Terik Parascak is him solving those problems and then passing off. So, for example, in the game that I watched where he put up 3 secondary assists, he caught a puck. He made a great defensive play in the defensive zone, caught the puck, skated up the ice, made a quick move to his backhand through a defender, then skated to the red line, made another quick, deceptive move in order to bait the defender into thinking he's going to pass. He moved out wide, then 2 passes later, it's a goal. Right, that's a goal that was created off the rush by Terik Parascak. That's not something we really saw last year. What we saw last year was Parascak moving the puck and then his teammates creating the play and him just kind of being there to finish it. So that's been a very interesting progression in Parascak's game. It's exactly what I wanted to see, and it's also exactly what I expected to see. When a player is this smart, they quickly adapt to things that they're not good at. Parascak, it was in his rookie year last year, so obviously he's gonna kind of default to plays that are comfortable for him. But as he grows as a player, as he develops, these types of very intelligent, quick processors usually tend to explore different areas of their game as they develop, and that's exactly what we're seeing from Parascak. And I'm very excited to see how far this train can go, because I've been hard on the Terik Parascak hype train for quite a while. So it's going to be very interesting to watch him progress. But that's our second segment done. We'll get into our third. We have two more prospects to talk about. Tomas Mrsic was a fourth rounder in the 2024 NHL draft, and Philippe Veilleux, who's a 2025 NHL draft eligible. We'll talk about that in just a sec. But just before, a quick word from our sponsors at FanDuel.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need all in one place to place live bets on the NFL. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you place your bets. Whether you want to take your swings on American football with the NFL or European football with the Champions League, the choice really is yours. Or perhaps you prefer tennis or golf, or if you're listening to this podcast, you may just be a hockey fan. Whatever sport floats your boat, FanDuel has something to offer you. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Alrighty, so let's wrap things up here with our final segment. We'll be talking about Tomas Mrsic and Philippe Veilleux, two very interesting prospects who I don't really see talked about too much in the scouting world. Tomas Mrsic, let's start with him. I mean, he had a fantastic week this past week. Put up 5 goals, 2 assists for 7 points in the past week, easily making the Rinkside Roundup as one of the week's top performers. He's up to 25 points on the season, 13 goals, 12 assists, and he's been phenomenal. And, I remember in his draft year, both of us and, last year we weren't with Elite Prospects. We were the directors of scouting for Dauber. Both of us were pretty big fans of him. And over at Elite Prospects, he ended up at 46th on their board before we joined the team. And he ended up getting picked, if I remember correctly, 114th overall in the 2024 NHL draft.
Very close, 113th in the fourth round.
Man, I was one off. Listen,
one off.
That's what happens when you don't have the player pages up. I'd rather keep it that way. But yeah, he was a legitimate B prospect for, I think pretty much most of the scouting world in his draft year. So first and foremost, what do you think led to his drop to 113th to St. Louis? What led to that?
He's not a very heavy player. He's 6 feet, 170 pounds, and it really is a skill-first player. Has a really heavy shot. He's a powerful skater. There's a lot to like in his toolkit, but he is like a bit more on the undersized, skilled kind of profile of hockey winger. And also last season, he was playing with the Medicine Hat Tigers, where he was surrounded by skill all season long, right? I mean, Caden Lindstrom when he was healthy, of course, Andrew Basha and Gavin McKenna. So there was so much skill in that lineup that I think there was perhaps a bit of a concern that Mrsic was just producing a lot. I mean, at a near point per game pace, just 1 under point a game mark through 63 games, as a result of playing with players of that caliber and just being lifted up to their level rather than being like the real offensive driver. But this season, in the offseason, he got traded to the Prince Albert Raiders. That was the trade. I believe that was the Ryder Ritchie deal that sent Ritchie to Medicine Hat the other way. And it's been great for Mrsic because he's been able to take charge of the offense in Prince Albert, a team that didn't really have a big offensive driver. They wanted to kind of shoehorn Ryder Ritchie into that role last season, which just isn't Ryder Ritchie's game whatsoever. but Mrsic has been up to the task this year with 13 goals and 25 points through 16 games. There's a lot more his game, a lot more puck touches, a lot more responsibility in transition, and really using his combination of speed and goal scoring to just rip open defensive structures and try to also score from distance a lot more, which he did when he did a full end-to-end solo rush, taking on all defenders this past week, and he scored a goal from long range as well. So he's been scoring from distance. He has a ridiculous shot. There's a lot to like here, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he's a phenomenal shooter. Like his shot is just, it explodes off his stick, and it just seems to always find the perfect corners. Like the goalie can be perfectly set. It doesn't matter. Mrsic's shot is just really phenomenal, and it's diversified as well too over the past year. He's gone from this catch and release, curl and drag shooter. Now he's throwing one-timers in there. He's catching pucks, moving them through defenders, and then shooting in motion, backhands, all that good stuff. It's really kind of diversified in his skill set. But also the interesting facet of that is, and I mean this episode in general just really focused on goal scorers, it seems. But with him, it's also the details. His sequences have gotten a lot more complete. He used to just kind of position himself off puck, get the puck in the neutral zone, just skate up the ice. He used to play higher up in the offensive zone. Now what we're seeing from Mrsic is he'll hunt opponents down low on the back check, below his goal line. He'll get the puck, move it to a defender, support them down low. Then he'll skate the puck out, deke through one layer, deke through another, and then kind of shoot through a screen. And just these sequences have gotten a lot more cohesive and complete than they were before. So it's been very interesting to watch him progress. But lastly, we have one more prospect to talk about before we close things off. A prospect I rarely see talked about. We got a couple questions, from about Veilleux and upcoming in the next mailbag episode. But Philippe Veilleux has been really, really good for the Val d'Or so far in the past 10-ish games. I think he's at 18 points in his past 10 games. Like a really, really good performance from him in the past couple of games. He only had one really good game this past week, but it was a 4-point game, and he really deserved to be in this Rinkside Roundup for his progression over the past weeks. So first, what have you liked from Veilleux overall in the past couple of days? What do you see as kind of his style? Because I'm still, I've watched him all year. I'm still not sure what he is at the NHL level, but he's very interesting, right?
He's a very interesting player. I mean, I don't think I'll be able to summarize his game as effectively as you can, because you've definitely watched more than I have. But I've really liked his ability to find space in the offensive zone. The finishing skill is a clear area of strength, and we've seen that especially in this past run of form. I mean, he's been scoring a lot of goals, and as you mentioned, 18 points in the last 10 games. And on top of that, he's a very intelligent player. I like his ability to find seams as a passer. He's a really refined off-puck mover in the offensive zone. He gets open, but also is able to get lost between checks. And the timing of his routes in the offensive zone, whether it be a flyby by the goal to time that with a point shot or anything else, is also quite refined. So there's a lot of intelligence that underlies his offensive game, but the actual offensive puck skills and the tools are also quite solid. So a lot of things to like with the offensive toolkit. Defensively, I haven't seen quite as much from him so far, but I mean, maybe you've had better viewings in the defensive zone than I have. Though the couple that I've seen have been very standard forward defending for QMJHL draft eligible, which is not the highest niveau, but still, he's a very interesting prospect, and I can definitely see why he's kind of in your B range of players so far this year.
Yeah, for sure. He's very peculiar. He's a slight player, not the best skater. He's an above average skater for sure, and it's improving, but he's not an elite skater for his size. Great shot, especially the catch and release is really good. The way he sets up his hips incredibly quickly. His hips kind of just snap into place when he's catching a puck in the offensive zone. So he doesn't need 5, 6, 7 puck touches to get his shot off. He quickly pivots into position. He's able to just rip it right away. In terms of the playmaking skill, it's all about anticipation and prediction with him. It's less about pure playmaking skill. It's a lot more about stringing together plays in translatable ways. One of the assists he got in the 4-point game that I watched of his this week was kind of button hooked off of the boards on the zone entry. Identified that he didn't have as much support as he thought. took a moment, skated off from pressure, and then waited for Nathan Brisson, who's also a draft eligible, has been very good this season for Val d'Or. He waited for Nathan Brisson to do what he does, which is crash a net just violently, and timed his shot and his shot placement perfectly with Brisson's movement, right? Like he saw Brisson just starting to go to the net. He shot towards the right pad of the goalie, forcing him to put out a rebound, and Brisson was there to just tap it in. Right, it was basically a pass off the goaltender. It was excellent from Veilleux. The playmaking smarts and savvy and processing and anticipation is really good, and the goal scoring's there. It's just he's an undersized scorer from the queue. Those usually don't tend to go very high. Justin Poirier scored more goals than Sidney Crosby in his draft year, and still went in the 5th round. So like there's certain limitations around these profiles, and I'd be very surprised if Veilleux ends up being more than a 3rd rounder. But I still think a team could potentially look at him as a, 55 to 64 type player. If he does go in the 2nd round, that's his range. It's going to be late. But that wraps things up for today's show. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the episode. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rate and review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. They've got all your news and updates about what's going on around sports. And make sure to tune in for our next shows as we continue our prospect coverage for the month of November. This has been Hadid Kalikesh with Sebastian High, and we hope you tune in next time.